The Star Wars science fiction media franchise is acknowledged to have been inspired by many sources. These include Southern and Eastern Asian religions, Qigong, philosophy, classical mythology, Roman history, Gnosticism, Zoroastrianism, parts of the Abrahamic religions, Confucianism, Shinto and Taoism, and countless cinematic precursors. Creator George Lucas stated, "Most of the spiritual reality in the movie is based on a synthesis of all religions. A synthesis through history, the way man has perceived the unknown and the great mystery and tried to deal with that or dealing with it." Lucas has also said that chivalry, knighthood, paladinism, and related institutions in feudal societies inspired some concepts in the Star Wars movies, most notably the Jedi Knights. The work of the mythologist Joseph Campbell, especially his book The Hero with 1,000 Faces, directly influenced Lucas, and is what drove him to create the modern myth of Star Wars. The life and character development of Luke Skywalker resembles that of the legendary King Arthur. Both are orphans who later become heroes in their early adulthood. Both also have mentors who are much older and provide them with guidance and/or training. Arthur was mentored by Merlin, whereas Luke was mentored and trained by Obi-Wan Kenobi prior to continuing his training and mentorship with Yoda. The role of Anakin Skywalker as the father of the hero, Luke Skywalker, mirrors that of Uther Pendragon, who is King Arthur's father. Qui-Gon Master Yoda, and Obi-Wan Kenobi's roles match that of Merlin during the era of Anakin Skywalker and Uther Pendragon respectively. Buck Rogers, another hero from pulp magazines from 1920s and late comic strips, 1929 to 67, and later a 1939 film serial and a 1950 to 51 TV series. Star Wars also influenced from its tropes. Flash Gordon is the pulp hero whose original property which George Lucas had sought to license before making the first Star Wars film. A New Hope includes many elements derived from the 1936 Universal serial Flash Gordon and its sequel, Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe. The basic plot involving the infiltration of a megalomaniacal outer space emperor's fortress by two heroes disguised in uniforms of soldiers of his army is drawn from Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe, with Luke Skywalker and Han Solo filling the roles of Flash Gordon and Prince Barrine, respectively, and Ming the Merciless the Emperor. The Emperor's deadly hostile planet, the Death Star Mongo, a sometimes scantily clad brunette space princess whom the hero defends, Princess Leia, Princess Aura, a big, strong, hairy, animal-like ally, Chewbacca, Prince Toon of the Lion Men, a fearsome monster found underground and all fought in an arena by the hero, the Rancer, the Gokko or Orangopoid, a city in the sky ruled by someone who originally works with the villains but later joins the heroes, Lando Calrissian of Cloud City, ray guns, and dogfighting. Space were all elements retained from the first Universal Flash Gordon serial. The opening text crawl of Star Wars is in the same style as the text openings of each chapter of the Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe serial. Lucas mentioned that he read the American translation of Perry Rhodan, a German science fiction pulp novel series in the late 1960s and early 1970s and considers the series to be an inspiration, less strong than Flash Gordon, but it influenced the design of many starships of Star Wars. Lucas has specifically cited the fact that he became acquainted with the term jidaigeki, period drama, the Japanese genre of samurai films, while in Japan, and it is widely assumed that he took inspiration for the term Jedi from this. Lucas has also cited John Ford's The Searchers and David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia as references for the style, if not the story, used in the films. A more direct homage to Lawrence of Arabia occurs in Attack of the Clones, as Padme and Anakin talk while walking around the Theed Palace on Naboo. It was filmed at the Plaza de España in Seville, Spain, which in Lawrence of Arabia was the site of the British Army headquarters in Cairo, and was shot in an exact manner as the scene in Lawrence of Arabia where Allenby, Jack Hawkins, and Dredon, Claude Rains, discuss whether to give artillery to Lawrence's Arab troops. The Tusken Raiders sequence in Attack of the Clones recalls the climax of The Searchers. Lucas is also a fan of Sergio Leone's film Once Upon a Time in the West, and according to Leone's biographer, Christopher Frayling, he listened to the score from Leone's film while editing The Empire Strikes Back. Many have considered Vader's first appearance in A New Hope as being an homage to the introduction of Henry Fonda's villainous Frank in the Leone film. The finale of 633 Squadron shows the squadron's planes flying down a deep fjord while being fired at along the way by anti-aircraft guns lining its sides. George Lucas has stated in interviews that this sequence inspired the Trench Run sequence in Star Wars. Lucas based the Luke Skywalker-Han Solo friendship based on his own friendship with Francis Ford Coppola. The Maschinenmensch, the robot in Fritz Lang's 1927 film Metropolis, inspired the look of C-3PO, although the Maschinenmensch is a gynoid whereas C-3PO has masculine programming. Lucas used the term the Force to echo its use by cinematographer Roman Kreuter in 21 to 87, 1963, in which Kreuter says, "Many people feel that in the contemplation of nature and in communication with other living things, they become aware of some kind of force, or something, behind this apparent mask which we see in front of us, and they call it God." Although Lucas had Kreuter's line in mind specifically, Lucas said the underlying sentiment is universal and that similar phrases have been used extensively by many different people for the last 13,000 years. A New Hope features the exploits of C-3PO and R2-D2, whereas the plot of the Hidden Fortress is told from the point of view of two different peasants. The two peasants, Tahei and Matashichi, are first shown escaping a battle, while C-3PO and R2-D2 are first shown fleeing an attack in A New Hope. Additionally, both films feature a battle-tested general, Rokurota Makabe in The Hidden Fortress and Obi-Wan Kenobi in A New Hope, who assist a rebellion led by a princess and engage in a duel with a former rival whom they fought years earlier. Lucas also features many horizontal wipe scene transitions in Star Wars, a technique used thoroughly by Kurosawa in his films. Similarly, the princess trades places with a slave girl in The Hidden Fortress, with the slave girl acting as a decoy for the real princess. In The Phantom Menace, Queen Amidala trades places with one of her handmaidens who acts as a decoy. Yojimbo, 1961, inspired the brawl scene in the cantina. Its sequel Sanjuro, 1962, inspired the hiding under the floor trick. Dango, an unofficial Western remake of Yojimbo, inspired Lucas on the name of his character Jango Fett. Dersu Uzala, 1975. Just 2 years before the first Star Wars movie, there are two scenes that bear a striking resemblance to scenes in Star Wars. The first is the captain and Dersu looking out over the horizon, seeing both the setting sun and the rising moon at the same time. This is much like when Luke Skywalker stares out on the sky with binary suns in A New Hope, George Lucas claims he became a fan of Star Trek when the original series broadcast in the late 1960s, which played an influence on the development of Star Wars in 1977. Lucas claimed he also visited Star Trek conventions. Lucas was quoted as saying, "I love history, so while the psychological basis of Star Wars is mythological, the political and social bases are historical." The stormtroopers from the movies share a name with the Imperial German stormtroopers and the Nazi German Sturmabteilung, lit. Stormtrooper. Imperial officers' uniforms also resemble some historical German army uniforms. Lucas himself has drawn parallels between Palpatine and his rise to power to historical dictators such as Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, and Adolf Hitler, saying the films exist as an examination of how democracies allow themselves to become dictatorships. The space battles in A New Hope were based on filmed World War I and were
Allied
RD
squadrons
War II
take the air
dogfights.
for an...
Commentators have noted the strong political analogies in the Star Wars universe to contemporary American politics. Major analogies include Lucas's opposition to the Vietnam War being seen in the original trilogy. Lucas even said in 2005 that Star Wars was really about the Vietnam War, and that was the period where Richard Nixon was trying to run for a second term, which got me to thinking historically about how do democracies get turned into dictatorships. Because the democracies aren't overthrown, they are given away. This claim was likewise backed up by the 1973 draft for the first movie, then called The Star Wars, where Lucas specifically mentioned that the theme involved an independent planet named Aquili that was compared to North Vietnam, and that the Empire was America 10 years from now. Ian McDiarmid, when recalling something Lucas told him during filming of Return of the Jedi, also implied that the Oval Office, and in particular, Nixon's President Y, played a role in the design of the Emperor's throne room.